You're almost there, just a few more hurdles to go. And I know it's easy to feel burnt out at this stage, but we've just got one final push. There's only one more assessment task to go, and that's the reflection. Now, the workshop this week is focused on reflection to help you prepare for that final assessment task. Why do we make you undertake reflection as part of the assessment? Well, as I've said many times before, reflection is a fundamental aspect of legal practice. Every year, to maintain your practicing certificate, you must undertake professional development. There are a range of courses and conferences that you can go to enhance your skills and knowledge in particular practice areas. But regardless of the professional development requirements embedded in your practicing certificate, to see career progression, you really need to adopt a reflective practice. Now, of course, the PLT or traineeship will provide you with essential skills and knowledge that you need to achieve a minimum level of competency. But to become an associate or senior associate or partner, you need to be reflective. You're not just experienced, but also reflective. You need to improve your legal skills so that the service that you offer is worth the extra money clients will pay for it. How do we go about doing this? Well, we engage in skills audits, which involves looking at your current skill levels, identifying those aspects that require work, and then identifying how to improve them and nominating a timeline to complete that as quickly as possible. But it should also be a part of daily practice. It should feel natural to reflect on your own work and the work of others, identify what you've done well and keep doing that, and where you need to improve your work. And then when you look at the work of others, identifying what they do well and how they do it so that you can then mimic that in your own work. When it comes to things like improving your drafting, it is absolutely essential that you engage in reflective practice. If a supervisor sends you back a letter with comments on it about what you should have done differently, you need to make sure that you not only take those comments on board for this particular letter and correct all the issues with that letter, but that in future you adopt those suggestions in your drafts so that you don't repeat those mistakes and end up having the same issues sent back to you by the supervisor. If you fail to do that, your work won't improve, and your supervisor will not be impressed that you're not learning from your mistakes. So it's really important to ensure progression in your work through reflective practice. Note that reflective practice goes beyond doing the minimum necessary, i.e. complying just with the feedback that your supervisor is giving you. Just because your supervisor has said these are the issues with your work and you don't repeat those, doesn't mean that you've produced the perfect letter. What it means is that it's achieved a particular minimum level. So you need to make sure that you are always critically looking at your own work and the work of others. Don't just rely on someone to tell you how to improve your work and that's the end of it. You'll achieve that minimum level of competency. Make sure that you are evaluating your own work and paying really careful attention to experienced practitioners and noting what they do and why they do it. Why is it impressive? That starts the process of transition to an experienced, highly skilled legal practitioner. To help you work on reflection for the assessment, the workshop this week is focused on reflection, and the study guide provides a list of questions you can consider to help you formulate your reflection. Note that these are not a mandatory list of questions. They're really only a springboard for you to think or brainstorm about how to address the reflection task. They're starting points to get you thinking about where you started, the learning process, what you have improved in terms of your drafting, areas that still might need a little bit more focus in the future. Please note that in your reflection assessment, providing a list of things you did wrong is really not helpful to you. You need to identify how you will improve on those items that appear on the list. If you're a bit of a perfectionist like me, some of you will be inclined to provide a ridiculously long list of all the things you did wrong, and that's really not helpful. It's important to identify the strengths in your work, good drafting practices you have adopted, areas that you've done well so that you keep doing them, and it's also important to not be your own worst critic and picking your work apart to such an extent that you feel that there's nothing positive left. That's emotionally exhausting, it's not good for your mental health, and it actually means that you're less likely to see any improvement because you've given yourself so much to do it becomes overwhelming. Instead, focus on one to perhaps 3 key areas that need further improvement and identify how you will go about improving them.
Now you can see on the slide there that we encourage you to adopt the 4 R's approach to reflection. These 4 stages are explored in the textbook, so I'm only going to provide a brief overview of each stage here. Before I talk about each of the 4 stages, I just wanted to point out that in reflection tasks we often see a lot of description about what the student did, but a lack of analysis and reflection on that conduct or work. Now that could perhaps be because the descriptive component is much easier to write, but unfortunately the descriptive element is only a small percentage of the marks. Obviously there has to be some detail about what you did to provide the reader with sufficient context to understand your reflection, but it is important that you do not allocate too many words to describing what you did. Description only falls within the first of the 4 R's, and it is therefore only a relatively small aspect of the task. The task is really designed for you to analyse your conduct or work and determine what you've learned from that experience and what you can do differently in the future. So as I've already said, that first R, reporting and responding, is really a descriptive task. But the other 3 R's are focused on analysis and reflection. So let's look at relating first. At this point, you are analysing why you did something in a particular way. So for example, if you were in a client interview, did you respond a particular way to your client due to a particular belief or an unconscious bias? In relation to legal drafting, I have seen students indicate that they work in a particular area of the law as a paralegal, and therefore assume that their first draft was good enough to submit. That assumption then led them to make a mistake in the drafting that might have been picked up if the document had been proofread. It could also be that time pressures or other factors impacted on the quality of the work in some aspects of a student's portfolio. So remember here that you are analysing your entire portfolio, and you can consider the extent to which your work and your response to each task varied over the course of the term. But you're really focusing here on why you did something in a particular way. Why did you produce that draft in that particular form? In the third stage, the reasoning stage, you can consider the working environment and how a legal professional might respond to the task. You should also link this to content that is relevant to your analysis, such as professional conduct rules or theory. Here you are really highlighting what you have learned from the experience. In your reflection, you could choose to look at each task individually or the portfolio as a whole. You could also use a couple of the workshop tasks as examples when you're reviewing that portfolio in its entirety. How you construct this aspect is really up to you, but it does need to reflect what you have learned and how your drafting skills have developed over the course of the term. The final stage, reconstructing, focuses on what you will do in the future. So the first 3 stages really looked at what happened in the past and your analysis of that past work. This stage looks at how you will change your drafting practices in the future and what further steps you can take to ensure the continual progression of your drafting skills. That brings us to the end of this video for this week. Thanks for watching.